Hi, everybody. This is a special report. Rather than doing a straight interview with someone, because there are so many different elements to get into this particular story, I decided to just do a straight up little journalistic report for you on the subject of chemtrails. As many of you know from having watched my interviews over the years, it's a subject I've been covering since since 2000, actually. I have a massive file with pictures and various articles through the years that I've compiled. And I eventually came to the place where I think a lot of you have, which is simply you look up at the sky and you say, I can't believe this is happening and I can't do anything about it. And you get frustrated and you just dial out. And then you go through your days looking up and issuing a couple of expletives and being done with it. Well, I don't think we can afford to do that anymore. There's enough evidence happening now that this has become a serious health risk to humanity. And it's a much more complex story than we have been looking at thus far. In the conspiracy theory community, it's easy to get really charged up and look at the obvious, but maybe some things are hiding in plain sight. And this is a case where we have both happening at the same time. Not only does it appear we have this secret agenda called chemtrails that's spewing out aluminum, barium, and strontium around the globe on a regular basis, a daily basis, depending on where you are at any given time. That's what it appears to be. Of course, this is an unacknowledged program, so this all has to be just purely anecdotal, speculative, and reports of people who have some kind of inside knowledge, but it's not validated or verified at all on any official level, making this even more frustrating. However, what is validated is that we have in 2018, 102,000 commercial flights running across our skies every day. So let's take the chemtrail story, aluminum, strontium, and barium, allegedly. Aluminum, strontium, barium, this very potent and hazardous cocktail that is said to be in the fuel, the aerosol components of the fuel in military operations called chemtrails. Then we have our 102,000 commercial flights running. I'm going to show you a chart in just a moment here. And there are also a lot of articles that have studies that have been done, articles coming out on the hazards, the essentially poisoning of the masses just through commercial aircraft. Now, if you start going down the rabbit hole on this one, it's interesting. It has a lot of components to the story. One of them is simply kind of like what happened with the car industry many years ago. They tried to get the knocking sound and all the nasty sound out of the early car engines by putting lead as an additive to the fuel, and that did. It gave it some efficiency, took down that horrible knocking sound that no one likes, ping, ping, in their car engine. Very similar thing happened in the airline industry. They had added lead to their fuel to be able to create fuel efficiency. Now, that has since been removed with something else. And the Shell's site itself says they do have additives in their fuel, but they will not list the constituents of those additives. But presumably, we're looking at something that is creating fuel efficiency for the airlines, understandably. And also we have something else. We talked about that noise and the lead. Their noise ordinances regarding airports have been very strictly enforced over the last couple of decades, where citizens really couldn't sleep at night because of the aircraft going overhead, rattling the roofs and such. So it's possible, this is just speculation, that their switch to these additives in the fuel and the removal of the lead may also have to do with noise abatement as well as fuel efficiency. But they're not saying on their site what these components are of this additive. However, look at this chart. Let's take a look at that. You'll see at the very, very top, these are the constituents in commercial jet fuel. Right at the very top, in terms of the toxins in there, you're looking at aluminum. Quite a bit further down, you'll see strontium. Barium isn't listed in there, and you can see also titanium is highlighted by the person that put this particular story together. So we're looking at now a commercial industry that is also dropping fuel with aluminum on us. We're looking at the chemtrail phenomena, whatever that may be, and we're talking about the primary constituents of aluminum, barium, and strontium, according to any report there are out there. Now, let's start switching over. First of all, I want to show you something. For those of you, this is really almost a little bit of infotainment, lest anyone think these don't exist. Now, I have interviewed Scott Stevens, a former weatherman, 2 or 3 times on Gaia. The first 2 times we talked about chemtrails directly. I've interviewed other people that have done documentaries on the topic, such as the subject of Dean Wigington on why in the world are they spraying and what in the world are they spraying, and some other people as well through the years, just smattering here and there. But this one's kind of fun because the guy is so gutsy. Okay, so take a look. We're just going to have a little fun for a minute of a weatherman on his nightly weather report talking about chemtrails. Here we go.
Northern California, we've got a bit of an unusual situation. Now, this first portion of the radar cycle, fairly bland and typical, but then you see these bands of very distinct cloud cover moving into the region. That is not rain, that is not snow, believe it or not. Military aircraft flying through the region is dropping chaff. Small bits of aluminum, sometimes it's made of plastic, or even metallicized paper products, but it's used as an anti-radar issue, and obviously they're up there practicing. Now, they won't confirm that, but I was in the Marine Corps for many years, and I'll tell you right now, that's what it is. 50 in Medford right now, 48.
I just thought that was fun. He says, I'm in the military. I know this stuff. So now let's talk about why we're doing this report at all, because that is my concern, is I'm tired of looking up and being frustrated and feeling helpless. And I'm really starting to become alarmed at some of the chronic diseases that are rising. Now, I want to read from a couple of people. One of them is a Dr. Richard Staub, who's a toxicologist out of Germany. He did do one particular study of 1,200 people, and essentially what he said here is the top toxins. Well, first let's get to this. 10 years ago, he said, we had an average of 20 toxins, the average person that came in for these toxicology tests, 20 toxins over the threshold of detection. Today, that number is 500, okay? And what is at the very top of the list? Aluminum, barium, and strontium. Remember what I said before? 102,000 commercial flights flying every day, to say nothing of wherever heavy chemtrail, alleged chemtrail, is happening as well, which should be theoretically in much higher saturations. So again, that's what they're finding at the very top. The top leaders in the toxicology, the toxic elements they're finding above the threshold of detection in the human body are aluminum, barium, and strontium. So with that, we go to our next little video. And let me first introduce Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt, who many of you may know through having studied this subject yourself. A lovely gentleman. He works in detoxing. He works in the US, Switzerland, Germany, and he's done a great deal of research. He is very direct and very clear as to what he attributes these toxins to. But before we go any further, let's talk about what he says. The presence of aluminum interferes with the energy production system in the mitochondria of cells and weakens the immune system. It kills neurons and interferes with their functioning. As nanoaluminum levels rise over time, chronic immune system disruption leads to weakness, disability, neurodegenerative diseases such as autism and Alzheimer's. He also, by the way, goes on to say that other illnesses he believes are directly a result of exposure to aluminum, barium, and strontium are Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, Lyme disease, he's an expert in that area, children's autism, hyperactivity, brain tumors. He said all of these are linked to the pollution of essentially our microbiome, our guts, and parasitic activity in the body. Now, when you mix that with Roundup, these glycophosphates, I believe they're called, which bind aluminum to them and drive them deeper into the cells, you have a real problem. So let's take a look at what Dr. Klinghardt has to say about how we can start cleaning this up out of our body. And this is a gentleman I have a tremendous amount of respect for. I've written to him a few times, tried to interview him, but he's a very busy guy. He's all over the world, and he hasn't gotten back to me yet. So I'm doing this little YouTube video of him in lieu of being able to get an actual interview. Let's take a look.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the darker things of our time. We've been using a special, very aggressive detox method in Germany called apheresis. It's a treatment similar to dialysis, where the entire volume of the blood is taken out from one arm, put through a filter system, and put back into the other arm. It's about a 3-hour procedure. And what we discovered there is that pretty much every American that we sent there is full to the ceiling with nanonized aluminum and with organophosphates, Roundup being the #1 place. And the interesting thing is there isn't a single lab in the US who can make this diagnosis. Why that is, I don't want to discuss here. It's not my place to judge that, but it doesn't, the aluminum toxicity didn't show up in the hair analysis. It did not show up in the different challenge tests that we do. But it's every one of our patients is now way over 100, has been dramatically toxic with aluminum. And just to give you a number, so on average, the aluminum amount in the blood, the toxic aluminum amount, is by the factor of more than 100 times higher than lead or mercury or cadmium or the other things that are discussed in our literature. And it's very clear that the source of the aluminum is the weather modification program that's been sprayed on the skies by planes with the intent to cool down the planet. But what goes up must come down, and we're inhaling it. Lung diseases are hugely on the increase in spite of the stopping of smoking because of it. And so we looked into that, how to get the stuff out. And there was a strange synergism between Roundup, the main ingredient is glyphosate, and aluminum. And as it turns out, Roundup acts as a chelator for minerals. So when we exposed to eating non-organic food, the Roundup that's sprayed on it binds the trace minerals of this very food and prevents it from being absorbed. So most of us get trace mineral deficient over time, even when we eat organic. It's always like, well, there is no such thing as really truly organic and clean, because the air moves, the rain moves, everything kind of gets mingled up. And so Roundup has the unfortunate property, when it binds with aluminum, it transports the aluminum deep into the brain and the central nervous system. This is not my research, this is more serious people than me that found that. And so what I want to focus on is that we cannot differentiate the detoxing a patient for aluminum and detoxing from Roundup. They go together. And so we looked in the literature. There's been a lot published about organophosphates, Roundup being one of them, or glyphosate being one of them. And I take you through that. So the things in the German literature is the humic acid from the lakes and high mountains, the moors, the black stuff in there that's full of humic acid and fulvic acid. And a concentrate of that is this product called matrix minerals. And that has been found to be very, very effective in clearing Roundup from the human body. That's published, it's not my idea. And so the second thing that is true for all organophosphates is there are certain plant adaptogens that are found in certain berries that are very, very effective in turning on the enzymes that clear the stuff from our system. And amongst those are acai, it's a berry from Brazil. Plums, the western plum is high in antioxidants that achieves this target. Pomegranate is in there, and the last kid on the block is the vitamin C from rosehip, is set in some research papers over 200 times more effective as an bioactive vitamin C as ascorbic acid. And so we put those two things together. One product is called Deep Purple, that contains the pomegranate, the plums, and the acai. and then the rosehip with this incredible cocktail of plant adaptogens that clear the stuff. And so our detox for Roundup is these three things. These two things make a pleasant smoothie, good tasting, at least for me, good tasting. The matrix minerals, it's about 1 ounce to 2 ounces a day. It's very easy to take, doesn't taste nasty. And then when we go to the aluminum, there's two things that stand out. Well, there's several things that clear aluminum from the body. One is simply citric acid, lemon juice. Make a water bottle, put a lemon in there, and drink it throughout the day. That does clear some aluminum from the system. But the most effective clearly is the cilantro. And so I mentioned it before, 2 dropperful 3 times a day of cilantro tincture goes a long way. BioPure has an electrolyte enhanced wild-crafted cilantro, which is my preferred product for this. But the taste, again, for children, they take better to the pure alcoholic tincture, which is this big bottle here. So it's citric acid, it's cilantro, and then the main ingredient that is listed in all the research papers is silica, and the main source of silica, of bioavailable small particle-sized silica that can go after the aluminum in the body, is in horsetail tea. And so I know BioPure will carry a horsetail tea that don't currently carry it, but it's fairly easy to find in the health food stores or to Google to source it on the internet. I do not recommend to take any of the synthetic silica products that are on the market right now. They simply don't work. They don't go after the aluminum in the system. And so this combination of cilantro, silica from horsetail tea, those 2 powders, and the matrix minerals really addresses this fundamental issue that is killing all of us. We're all being poisoned with this stuff, and so this is the way out of it. And however, in order to make this work, we still need the binders on board. When we keep that all in mind, that these things work together.
Okay, I find that incredibly useful, incredibly gentle. These are things anybody can do to start cleaning up the system. And I just want to say, this originally came to my attention, the health deficits that are created by this exposure while living in Sedona in the early 2000s. One of my friends was Doc Hutton. He was the town doctor. Everyone went to Doc Hutton to have chelation done, have vitamin IVs done, anything that was more progressive. Doc Hutton offered those services, but he would always complain that his office was swarmed and he didn't get any rest after heavy chemtrail spraying days. And at that time, there was also another component in the chemtrails that was kind of a fibrous, just little spider webby looking stuff that came down and fell onto the trees. And we actually went around and gathered it and never had it analyzed, but we gather it after chemtrailing days. And he said this was wreaking real havoc in town with the people's upper respiratory tract. So that's really what propelled me on to studying chemtrails all those years ago. Now, since then, many other things that I've found out about, many other experiments. I mean, there are citizen groups around the world, especially UK and America in particular, that have their blood drawn. They take a look at these levels of toxicity, for example. But one of the things here that is important to note is that they're talking about nano-aluminum being sprayed, okay, in these chemtrails. Nano-aluminum cannot be measured by any standard lab test. You have to have the use of an electron microscope. So what you're seeing mostly are tests that have to do with blood levels, right, of aluminum, but we don't have these other measurements for the nano-aluminum particles that have been essentially driven into our tissues, including the brain. So I don't want to see an epidemic of dementia and Alzheimer's for our generation and subsequent generations. I don't want to see these little kids hyperactive, suffering from autism and all. If there is any way that this can be avoided by simply taking inexpensive and logical actions on our own behalf, then that's what I'm really hoping to accomplish with this video. So again, here we have some of the very simple things Dr. Klinghardt said we can do to start chelating the aluminum out of our body. So again, he likes the company biopureus.com products. He's not affiliated with them. I'm not affiliated with any of these people. Matrix Minerals, which clears the Roundup out of the body. Acai, plums, pomegranate, and vitamin C from rosehip does the same. As far as aluminum goes, citric acid, which is simple as pouring lemon juice in water and always keeping lemon juice in our water. Cilantro tincture. I take a green drink with a lot of fresh cilantro in it most days. And then silica from horsetail tea. All these things are said to be able to effectively chelate this out safely from the body at not a high cost to us on any level. So I hope this has helped. Go ahead and share it with your friends. Let it go viral. Let people know it's not just a conspiracy. You can go online. There's a lot of research on what's happening to our health just from commercial flights, jet fuel alone, to say nothing of the chemtrails. So we have to take it on. We were able to get the lead out of gas in the 1970s. We can do this again. I don't know what it's going to take and what kind of citizen action and pressure on our legislators, but somehow the fuel has to be amended. In terms of the darker agendas that Dr. Klinghardt talked about and we all know of, I don't know what we can ever do to ameliorate that. I think it just has to happen through attrition. People die, agendas change, consciousness changes. In the interim, we don't have to suffer as a result of these. So please feel free to pass this video on to anyone you know that is proactive about their own health and the health of those they care for. Thank you for watching this video. You can find many more like it free of charge by going to reginameredith.com. And if you're finding that this kind of content is adding value to your life, you might want to support my work by clicking on the Patreon button on the website, reginameredith.com. As a patron, you have special videos, insider commentary, and much more. Check it out.